Right, so the concept of when this pair, you have this pair, and you're inserting it into back right, the idea of either using S R S prime or wide F R wide F prime, using either of them and why or when to use them has sort of been interesting for me. And so I'd kind of like to talk about which you should use in what situations and what you should look for, essentially. So a big thing to look for in a situation like this, of course, when you're inserting this pair, when you're comparing the two inserts, is how it affects this last pair that you're going to be inserting, this FR pair. So in this case, for example, we have this, and if we were to do wide FR wide F prime, you see that we get this case where the edge is inserted and the corner is twisted. And that's a bad case, especially for the last pair. You can't do keyhole, and it's just a long solution. There's nothing, not to my knowledge at least, good for it. If you were to use SRS prime though, to insert this pair, you get a slightly better last pair, and you can rotate or do whatever Brian's son does. He knows a lot. But then, on the contrary, in a case like this, where if you do SRS prime for this insert right here, you see that we get, it's an okay pair, but it's nothing extraordinary. But if you were to do wide FR wide F prime, you see you get a free pair, so you want to use that, of course. So it's unclear as to if one is objectively better than the other without going over every single last two pair cases like these, and essentially saying which is best. There's no way of really deciding which is objectively the best, because in each situation they can be used to great effect. So in the context of a speed solve, it's really like, you don't want to memorize all the allogs for like, oh, I want to do wide FR wide F prime and just know that. That's impractical and unnecessary, really. What you do want to look for, though, is how pieces are affected when you do each insert, how they're affected differently, and then over time you can eventually start to see what type of pieces go to the U layer, where they stay, where they go, when you're inserting this pair for both inserts. And generally, what I found is that you kind of want to essentially try and find what type of pieces go into the U layer. And this is assuming that you don't get any like this free pair setups or whatever. And if it's the same, such as a case like this, where you get the same case regardless of the insert that you use, just feel free to pick and choose. And I say that you would want to put all the pieces in the last layer to sort of, in some way to, I guess, illustrate that is if you know some slight EO tricks for last pair, like doing sledgehammer rather than UR prime for this last pair, because you would want to get a cross-solved case like this. And you generally want to do that not because they're always the best options, because you could get something like you have cases like this, for example, for OLO, which are obviously faster than a lot of the cross cases, but it's generally a really safe idea to go for cross cases if you can. And I'd say the same applies for in SR S prime versus wide FR wide F prime inserts. You generally want to go with a very safe option for last pair, not necessarily the best, but a very safe one. So generally, all in all, it's a pretty good idea to incorporate both of these types of inserts into your solves, depending on the case. Like as illustrated before, like in this case, doing SR S prime, or in this case, doing wide FR wide F prime. It generally just boils down to the case that you're solving and your knowledge of how the pieces are affected with each insert. And then you can make a judgment based off of that as to how you should insert this pair.